Have you ever achieved everything you once fought for, only to realize that it could all be taken away from you in an instant? Have you ever stood at the peak of glory, yet felt suffocatingly alone? I thought that when I saved the family business from bankruptcy, when I turned it into a premium food empire, I would finally be recognized, and the company would be mine. But it turned out, I was too naive. My family blindsided me with their decision. But they will regret it. Crystal glasses clinked, their delicate chime echoing through the VIP room of the Hawthorne, one of Boston's finest restaurants, a celebration of my success. After 8 years of relentless work, countless sleepless nights, and betting everything I had, I finally made it. Roswell Gourmet, the premium artisanal food company I resurrected from a failing mom-and-pop shop, had now become a national brand. I had just secured a $7,500,000 investment from Wellington Partners, one of the most prestigious venture capital firms, to expand production and distribution. Applause erupted as Edward Hastings, the firm's lead investor, raised his glass to Rose, the formidable woman who has proven that with relentless effort and determination, nothing is impossible. I smiled, raising my glass in return. I should feel completely happy, shouldn't I? But then, my mother leaned in, her voice just low enough for me to hear over the lively chatter in the room. Rose, you've done very well, but when Andrew returns next month, I think he would be the better choice for the CEO position. I froze. Andrew. My brother. The one who had been gone for an entire year, traveling across Europe after earning his MBA from Wharton, without contributing a single thing to the company. I blinked, struggling to keep the smile on my face. The shock was overwhelming. What are you saying, Mom? I asked, keeping my voice steady. She gave my hand a gentle squeeze as if consoling a child. You're capable, Rose. But Andrew is a man, and he has an MBA. He'll be stronger in business. His travels have given him a broader vision than you. I almost laughed. Broader vision? I was the one who had dedicated my entire life, my youth, to saving Roswell Gourmet. When my parents were at a loss, watching the company teeter on the brink of collapse, I was the one who walked away from a lucrative 9-figure financial career, leaving behind the stability of New York, to return to Boston. I mortgaged my own apartment, took out loans to keep the company afloat through its darkest days. And what had Andrew done? Hopped from one Michelin-starred restaurant to another, lounging on luxury beaches, posting Instagram photos with hashtags like business mindset, earning his MBA online. His experience amounted to nothing more than globetrotting and indulging in the finest luxuries the world had to offer. I tightened my grip around my wine glass, feeling the blood in my veins simmer with rage. But when Edward Hastings glanced at me curiously, I forced myself to swallow the fury rising in my throat. I couldn't expose this betrayal now. Is everything all right, Rose? Edward asked, his voice calm, but I was anything but. I took a deep breath, raising my glass higher. Perfectly fine. Keeping up the illusion. But in my mind, one thought echoed. My parents had disrespected me, dismissed my years of sacrifice and hard work. They expected me to hand everything over to Andrew. I wouldn't let my brother waltz in after doing nothing and take control of everything I built. They had decided to give my success to him. 8 years ago, when I stepped out of the gleaming glass tower of Baxter & Co., where I had worked as a financial analyst in New York, I knew I was making the biggest gamble of my life. I still remember the way my boss looked at me that day. Rose, are you really giving up a promising career to sell jam? So I didn't answer. Because at that moment, I didn't have a definite answer. I only knew one thing. If I didn't act, Roswell Gourmet would collapse. And to me that was never an option. The first days at Roswell Gourmet were hell. I stepped into the flagship store in Cambridge right at noon. No customers. No online orders. Bills piled up on the desk. I looked at my parents. They looked exhausted, drained, but the worst part was the resignation in their eyes. They had accepted failure. I couldn't. I immediately took action. During the day, I stood behind the counter, personally serving every customer, trying to understand what they wanted, why they used to come here but had stopped. At night, I buried myself in balance sheets, searching for every expense that could be cut, every flaw in the system that could be fixed. In the first month, I shut down the second store. My father protested furiously. "You can't do this, Rose, we've invested too much in it." "That's exactly why we're in debt." I pushed the financial reports toward him. "We're losing $12,000 a month. If we don't shut it down now, in 6 months, not only will that store be gone, but the entire company will be too." My mother fell silent. She knew I was right. 3 weeks later, the second store officially closed. By the third month, I'd bet everything on e-commerce. I knew that relying solely on local customers would never allow Roswell Gourmet to grow. We needed a larger, more stable sales channel. I did what no one else dared to do. I used my own apartment as collateral to secure funding for the e-commerce system. I sold my old engagement ring, a Rolex I had bought with my first paycheck at Baxter & Co., and pooled every last bit of my savings. With that capital, I hired a team of developers, and over the next 6 months, RoswellGourmet.com officially launched. In the second year, the biggest turning point happened. One day, a famous food blogger unexpectedly wrote about us. I never thought a jar of jam could leave such a lasting impression on me, but Roswell Gourmet's product did just that. Her post spread like wildfire. Sales tripled within a month. I seized the opportunity to launch a monthly subscription service, and within 6 months, we had over 800 subscribers. Roswell Gourmet was no longer just a small shop, it had become a real brand. 4 years later, I had taken the company to an entirely new level. Revenue increased by 340%. Our products were now on the shelves of over 200 stores nationwide. We had over 200 loyal customers. I once thought this would be the moment my parents were proudest of me. But even after accomplishing all of this, in their eyes, I was still just holding the seat warm for Andrew. Back to the present. I sat in my office, looking out at the streets of Boston. The crisp October air made me more alert than ever. I had fought, sacrificed too much to get here. And yet, they thought I would give it all up so easily? I glanced down at my phone screen. A new message from my mother popped up. "I spoke with Andrew, he thinks it's time for a change too. You should reconsider the CEO position." I clenched my phone tightly. Did they really think I would let this happen? No. I built this company. I turned a small shop in Cambridge into a national brand, thanks to my connections from my previous job. Former partners had supported me tremendously. And yet, in my parents' eyes, I was still just keeping the seat warm for Andrew. My celebration had just turned into a declaration that I would be replaced in the very company I had pulled from the brink of failure. Sitting in the limo on my way home, I watched the city lights flickering outside the window. A plan began to take shape in my mind. I once believed that if I worked hard enough, sacrificed enough, my parents would finally see my true worth. But I was wrong. I knew that if they handed the company over to Andrew, everything I had fought for would be destroyed. I wouldn't let their reckless idea of putting my unqualified brother in charge become a reality. For the past 3 years I had learned everything, every aspect of the business, and now, I would use that knowledge to save this company once again. But more than that, I would save myself from the disaster my parents were trying to bring upon me. It would be catastrophic. As dinner neared its end, Edward Hastings, the lead partner at Wellington, raised his glass in a toast. "Rose, you've transformed a small shop into a national brand. Without you, Roswell Gourmet wouldn't exist today. I look forward to a long and successful partnership between you and our firm." I smiled, about to respond, when my mother suddenly spoke up. "Edward, my son Andrew will be taking over as CEO when he returns next month. This is the perfect time for a transition. For someone with a deeper management background to take the company even further." The room fell silent. It felt like the entire world had frozen. The words she had just said, had I misheard them? I snapped my head toward her, but she remained completely composed, as if what she had just announced was the most natural thing in the world. "Excuse me, Mrs. Roswell." Edward spoke up, his voice lower, the excitement gone. "What exactly do you mean?" My mother smiled confidently. "Rose has done a wonderful job, but Andrew has an MBA from Wharton and a strategic vision. She has laid a solid foundation, but to elevate the company to the next level, Andrew is the better fit." A foundation? I had spent 4 years building this company from the ground up. I had sacrificed my youth, my finances, my sleep, my entire personal life. And in my mother's eyes, I was just a stepping stone for Andrew? The investors' reaction. I glanced at Edward and his team. They were exchanging looks, clearly displeased by what they had just heard. "Mrs. Roswell," Edward said, his tone serious, "our investment is not in the Roswell family. Our investment is in Rose. We trust in her vision, in the strategies she has successfully executed over the years." My mother seemed taken aback but quickly recovered. "Of course, we will still have Rose managing things, as she has been," she said with a dismissive smile, "but the company will grow even more with someone who has a broader vision. Andrew, taking over as CEO, is the right step for the company's future." I clenched my fists, feeling a cold rage spreading through me. They didn't see me as the one who had rebuilt this company. Edward looked directly at me. "Rose, what are your thoughts on this?" This was the most important moment of my life. I could explode right here and let chaos unfold. Or I could take control. I chose the second option. I set my wine glass down on the table and slowly lifted my head, locking eyes with my mother. "It seems like this is a decision that I was not informed about," I said, my voice calm. "Strange, considering I'm the one who has worked tirelessly to bring this company to where it is today." My mother opened her mouth to speak, but I continued. "I see," I nodded as if finally realizing something obvious. "Everything I've done has been to pave the way for Andrew to sit in that seat. That's the truth. Isn't it, Mom?" Her face hardened. "Rose, don't say that. I only want what's best for the company. When a company grows, it needs even stronger leadership." I let out a short, bitter laugh. "No. You want what's best for Andrew. You've never valued me. You've never believed that your daughter could be the one to lead this company." My counterattack began. I turned to Edward. "I think we need a private meeting on Monday." He understood immediately, of course. I stood up. "Thank you all for coming. I believe my dinner is over." I turned on my heel and left the room behind. My father called after me, but I didn't stop. I saw everything clearly now. They never intended for me to hold this company long term. But as experienced as they were, they had underestimated me. I wasn't someone who would easily let my hard work be handed over to someone else. As I stepped out of the restaurant, I pulled out my phone and dialed Daphne, the head of marketing. "We need an emergency meeting," I said, my voice cold. "What's going on?" she asked, concerned. I took a deep breath. "My family is trying to replace me. And I won't let that happen." I had never believed that success was something that could be stolen. If someone wanted to take what I built, they would have to fight for it, and I would make sure they lost. Sunday morning, 6 a.m. I was already at the office. Roswell Gourmet's headquarters was quieter than ever. No one else was here yet. Just me, the numbers, and a plan about to unfold. In front of me were 2 folders. The first, a plan to defend my position as CEO, proving that I was the only one truly capable of leading this company. The second, a backup plan. If they insisted on replacing me, I would leave and build a new brand, taking my loyal team, suppliers, and customers with me. I stared at the documents, feeling the cold air of the office wrap around me. No matter which path they chose, I would not lose. 9 a.m. The secret meeting with the investors. Edward Hastings and his team arrived on time. I didn't wait for them to settle in, I went straight to the point. "I know exactly what my family is trying to do," I said firmly. "They want to replace me with my brother Andrew, Diane Thomas, one of the key investors, adjusted her glasses, her expression serious. "We notice the tension at the dinner," she said. "But the more important question is, which side benefits us the most?" I scanned the room before placing a thick folder in front of them. "Because I am the one who built this company," I said, my voice unwavering. I opened the folder, flipping through page after page of concrete proof. Financial growth. Since I took over, revenue had increased by 340%. Our products were now in over 200 stores nationwide. And we had 200 loyal customers. Strategic decisions. I was the one who shut down failing branches, launched the e-commerce system, and secured partnerships with major retail chains. As for Andrew, I slid a blank sheet of paper across the table toward them. "This is a list of Andrew's contributions to the company in the past 8 years. Silence. Diane raised an eyebrow. "A blank page?" I gave a cold smile. "Exactly. If you side with me, I will continue to drive growth. But if Andrew takes over, that will no longer be the case." I flipped to the next document. A customer survey report I had compiled over the past 2 years. I asked our customers a very simple question. I said, "Why do they choose Roswell Gourmet?" Diane flipped through the pages, her eyes lighting up as she saw the results. 70% of customers said they were drawn to the brand story, a family business rebuilt by a young woman who dared to take risks. 25% said they trusted the product quality, something I had personally overseen and improved every single day. Only 5% of customers had even heard of the name Roswell before I turned it into a recognizable brand. I looked directly at Edward. "No one cares about the name Roswell. They care about what I've built. And it's my name that brings value to this company." Edward sat silently for a few seconds before nodding. "I see. I have a question for you, Rose," Edward said, his fingers interlocked. "What if your family insists on putting your brother in charge?" I slid the second folder across the table toward him. "This is the plan for a new brand." Diane opened the file, her eyes widening as she took in the details. Distribution network. 80% of suppliers were willing to switch and work with me if I left. Key personnel. I had already spoken with the most critical employees in the company. They were ready to follow me. Marketing strategy. A complete brand repositioning plan with the message, "The creator of Roswell Gourmet now brings you something even better." Edward stared at me, then smiled. "You've been preparing for this for a long time, haven't you?" I shrugged. "I originally planned to use this for the family's next expansion project, but now, it's going to be my project." After an hour of discussions, Edward placed his hands on the table. "We're with you, Rose." I kept my expression calm, but the anger inside me had finally cooled, replaced by absolute certainty. "So what will you do if my family still tries to push me out?" I asked. Edward tilted his head slightly, then gave a cold smile. "If they don't keep you, then the entire investment goes with you." I took a deep breath. I had secured the biggest investor, now the rest of the shareholders would have to follow. Sunday night. I sat alone in my office. Outside, the city was completely dark. I held a glass of red wine, watching the city lights reflect off the glass window. If my parents made the wrong decision, they would regret it. I was ready for whatever came next. Monday, 8:30 a.m. I walked into Roswell Gourmet headquarters, as usual, but I wasn't. Daphne, Jason, and Tamara, the 3 most important people on my management team, were already there. They didn't need a call. Didn't need a reminder. They knew what today meant. I looked at them, and for a brief moment, warmth flickered through me, in the middle of the storm ahead. They were here for me. Not for the name Roswell, but for what I had built. Jason met my gaze, his expression firm. "Rose, are you ready?" I nodded. I was more ready than ever. 8:45 a.m. The glass office doors swung open, and my parents walked in. My mother wore an elegant business dress, her makeup flawless, but it couldn't hide the tension in her eyes. My father looked exhausted. as if he hadn't slept all night. And then, Andrew appeared. He wore a brand new suit, a smug half-smile on his face, as if everything had already been decided. I watched them but said nothing. Instead, I walked to the conference table, opened my laptop, and turned on the projector. I wasn't here to beg. I was here to declare. 9:00 a.m., the meeting begins. When Edward Hastings and his team walked in, the atmosphere in the room shifted. My mother immediately stood up, putting on a polite smile. "Edward, thank you for coming. We have many plans to discuss. I think we should get straight to the point." Edward cut her off, his voice sharp. His gaze swept across the room, pausing on me before turning back to my mother. "We've all heard about your leadership transition plan." My mother's expression flickered for a split second. "I believe Andrew will bring a fresh direction to the company." Edward leaned back in his chair, fingers interlocked. "Perhaps you've forgotten the most important factor." He placed a folder on the table. "We invested in Rose, not the Roswell name." The room fell silent. Andrew's brow furrowed, and for the first time, his smug confidence wavered. "I have an MBA from Wharton. I've worked with major corporations. I have." "What do you have?" I interrupted, my voice calm but ice cold. I clicked to the next slide on the screen. Total hours Andrew has spent working at this company over the past 8 years, 26. Number of strategic meetings Andrew has attended, 0. Number of deals Andrew has secured, 0. Actual work experience, none. Real-world corporate exposure, none. Time spent traveling instead of working, years. I locked eyes with him. "If you think an MBA and a few trips around Europe qualify you to be CEO, you're mistaken." My mother still refused to back down. "Rose, I'm not denying that you've done an excellent job, but with Andrew's experiences, he can take the company to the next level." "Based on what?" I narrowed my eyes. "Your favoritism?" My father sighed, running a hand over his face. He knew this was a mistake, but my mother wasn't ready to admit it. Edward leaned forward, his voice slow but carrying an undeniable weight. "We cannot invest in a company where the CEO is replaced by someone with no contributions. If Rose leaves, we leave." My mother was stunned. "You can't do that." Edward smirked. "No, I'm simply stating the facts." I looked at them and laid out 2 choices. Option 1. I remain CEO. I continue to lead this company as I have for the past 4 years. I turned to Andrew. "You can work under me as Vice President of Business Development, where you can actually learn how a company operates." Andrew clenched his fists but said nothing. I continued. Option 2, I walk away. I take my loyal team, my supplier network, and our customers with me. I looked at my mother. "And when that happens, this company will collapse." The truth finally broke through. My mother opened her mouth to argue, but she couldn't find a valid reason. My father looked at me for a long moment, then nodded. "You're right." He picked up the pen and signed the agreement. My mother had no other choice. She gripped the pen tightly, but, in the end, signed as well. I kept my expression calm, but deep inside, I knew this was the moment I had truly secured everything that rightfully belonged to me. The meeting ended. Daphne was already waiting outside, her eyes shining. "Did we do it?" I looked at her and gave a small smile. "We won." Roswell Gourmet still existed. But, from this day forward, it was mine. Not my family's. 6 months later, I once thought that winning that boardroom battle would make me feel triumphant. That when I signed the agreement confirming my position as CEO of Roswell Gourmet, I would feel relief. That I would finally experience the recognition I had craved for so many years. But reality was different. Victory didn't bring absolute satisfaction. It only confirmed what I had known all along. I never needed their validation. The company thrived. Under my leadership, Roswell Gourmet didn't just remain strong, it exceeded every expectation. Revenue grew by 50% in the past 6 months, far surpassing initial projections. Our subscription service had reached over 300,000 loyal customers. Our products were now available in more than 350 stores nationwide. And most importantly, I had proven that this company's success wasn't because of the Roswell name. It was because of what I and my team had built. Family dynamics changed. Things became strictly professional. I no longer attended family dinners. No more check-in calls from my mother, no more forced efforts to maintain the illusion of a harmonious family that I had once tried so hard to uphold. We only spoke when necessary, and only about business. My father had accepted reality. He no longer tried to convince me to share power with Andrew. When he saw me in meetings, he remained serious, but had stopped offering unsolicited advice, as if he still had authority over me. My mother, however, was different. She couldn't hide her disappointment every time she saw me leading the company. I saw it in her eyes. She still believed that Andrew deserved this more than I did, despite all the evidence proving otherwise. She was still waiting for the day I would make a mistake, for me to stumble so that Andrew could step in and take my place. But that day would never come. And Andrew? He still hated me. He didn't bother to hide it. After being forced into the role of Vice President of Business Development, he tried to prove his worth. But he couldn't keep up with the company's pace. He never would. For the past 6 months he had pitched countless groundbreaking ideas, yet none were practical enough to implement. Every time he presented a half-baked plan in a meeting, I only needed to ask one simple question to leave him flustered. "Andrew, do you have any data to prove this will work?" His response was always silence, or meaningless numbers. And little by little, he was pushed to the sidelines. He hated me for that. But he hated me even more because he knew I was right, and that I was better than him. One late evening, I stood by the glass wall of my office, looking down at the dazzling lights of Boston. Daphne walked in, carrying 2 cups of coffee. She sat across from me, observing me for a moment before speaking. "Are you satisfied?" I let out a small laugh. "With what?" She shrugged. "With everything that happened? With proving that you're the only one who truly deserves to run this company." I gazed out the window, thinking for a moment. "I don't need to prove that anymore," I said, my voice soft but resolute. For so long I had sought validation from my parents, from the very people who should have believed in me from the start. But now, I understood. I didn't need their approval. My worth wasn't defined by a CEO title or my family's acceptance. My worth was in what I built, and in the people who believed in me from the beginning. Daphne nodded, a knowing smile on her face. "Then here's to your victory." She raised her coffee cup. I clinked mine against hers, but I didn't call this a victory. This was freedom. I hadn't just reclaimed my company, I had reclaimed my life. The story of Rose. Rose's journey wasn't just a corporate power struggle, it was a fight to reclaim her self-worth. Her story reflects a harsh reality in many families: favoritism, traditional expectations, and the dismissal of efforts from those who aren't seen as the default heir. But Rose proved that true value doesn't come from status or external validation, it comes from what we build with our own abilities. Success isn't handed to you, you have to fight for it. And sometimes, the greatest freedom comes when you stop seeking approval from those who never believed in you. What does Rose's story make you think about? Have you ever been in a situation where your efforts were overlooked? Share your thoughts in the comments below, and don't forget to subscribe for more powerful stories about family, success, and self-worth.